I think there's a lot of people out there who are false prophets.
So I'm at this with somebody the other day. I think there's a lot of noise on the internet now with regards to training and nutrition, strength conditioning, hitting mechanics, swing mechanics, pitching, whatever it is. It's kind of hard to sift through the static and figure out what's actually important and like who's right versus who's just kind of spouting nonsense. And I think it's easier for guys like us to try to kind of sift through it. But the thing that's frustrating for me is the average parent and the average athlete, like they don't have the same background we have. So they'll see a video from somebody on Twitter doing something that I think is ridiculous. And I'm basing that on my, 15 years of experience doing this and my, my degrees, my certifications. But then they'll come to me and they say they want to do this and they saw on Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah.
And I can look at it, having had all my experiences and my knowledge, and say, okay, I think that's not a good idea. I'm like, well, this guy says it is a good idea. I'm like, well, who is this person? Like, do they have any kind of credentials at all?
Yeah.
A lot of times they don't.
Well, Huckleberry Johnson told me I should do 14 jumps before every at bat in the next circle. Like, well, Huckleberry might be wrong.
But it's like, so I've been accused of having like a closed mind before in regards to some of the, like, I think goofier ideas in terms of strength conditioning and baseball
Twitter
performance.
Do you have a closed mind?
Yes, Twitter has told me I have a closed mind. And it's just so, the irony is that, like, I actually do not have a closed mind at all. My thing is, I like to learn as much as I can about as many different approaches as possible. The thing is, I'm not going to just apply all those approaches. You can't. Like, you have to go into it with a certain amount of skepticism, I think. Yeah. And you have to evaluate things based on, does this make rational sense? Is there any kind of research behind this versus just saying, oh, this guy did this. That sounds awesome. I'm going to do that. Yeah. And it's kind of hard to impress upon people that not everything you read is correct, and you have to have a little bit of skepticism to you.
Yeah, well, and also a lot of people's burden of proof is like either non-existent or just kind of junk. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I was doing this with this one trainer and I felt like it really helped me. It's like, well, what does that mean? It helped you. Mm-hmm. Like, did you throw harder? Did you run fast? Like what did it do for you? And a lot of times people can't articulate it.
Yeah.
It's like foam rolling. I foam rolled. I think a lot of people foam rolled. I think there's still some benefit for foam rolling. But after a while, I was like, I feel like I'm wasting a lot of my time doing this foam roller, and I'm not sure if it's doing anything for my body. Mm-hmm. And I think it's more than ever, it's like one of those things that if you only have 40 minutes to train, do I want to spend 10 minutes of that doing foam rolling? Is it really doing anything to my muscles? I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's just like one example.
Where do you sit on the debate over like subjective, how do I phrase this? Like, if an athlete thinks something helps them, then it helps them.
I mean, I think for performance-wise, the placebo effect is very real. Like, if you want to, like, lick both of your elbows, touch your nose twice, click your heels, and then
nice.
And if that makes you good, it's like in Bull Durham, which I watched for like the 78th time the other day. Mm-hmm. When he's wearing the garter pitching, Nuke is, and Annie gets mad at him because they're on a little bit of a break almost, and Crash yells at Annie, if you think it helps you, then it does. That's not true in the weight room. That's not true like for all these different things that have some sort of tangible benefit. But like your pregame mental stuff and some little physical things that maybe make you feel good, or you think you've done your work in a certain way, I think the placebo effect's very real there. Mm. But everyone's different how they experience that.
Yeah. So here's my thing. If we're just going off a placebo effect, couldn't you just kind of like tell somebody literally anything and get the same effect then, if they believe you and they kind of trust you? Like, if I'm your coach, I'd tell you, all right, dude, like, before you take this swing, I want you to squeeze your right big toe hard 10 times and then take your swing and you'll hit better. Or like, you would believe me if I said that. Or if I said squeeze your left big toe 10 times, you believe it the same, right?
Yeah.
So my thing is like if athletes have if they have like a routine that works for them, they kind of came up with organically, and it's just that's how they feel, they like it, that's great. But if you get coaches that are telling them you need to be doing this drill, that drill, that drill, and they know that it's not really making a difference, they're just trying to get some kind of weird placebo effect out of it. I don't like that. I think that sets us back as a profession. I really kind of hate it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If it's supposed to make tangible long-term benefits, then the placebo effect's not going to work.
Yeah.
But if it's like, coach, I'm in a slump, I'm feeling really miserable, I'm 0 for my last 14, and you're like, wiggle that big toe. I'm like, got you, coach. Then you go in there, you wiggle it, then like, that's fine. But
yeah,
we can kind of figure out those are not the same thing.
But here's the problem. So you take something like that, that's just kind of a silly thing you're trying to make an athlete do just to get some kind of placebo effect out of them. Now that athlete goes and tells his other buddies, oh, dude, the secret to hitting is you got to squeeze that big toe 10 times. Yeah, and then it starts propagating. Yeah. Now we have like a feel. Or,
propagating, that's a good plant term.
Yeah. We have like a feel or a drill. And it's picking up steam because this one guy did it, and now all these other guys are doing it. And now everybody thinks that the key to hitting is squeezing your big toe when that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And then you have to explain to people that's not why it works. And then you get calls closed-minded. You get into a big argument on Twitter about the towel drill.
Yeah. The towel drill.
You know C.J. Stroud, the quarterback for the Texans?
No, but I hear he's a quarterback for the Texans.
He's a quarterback for the Texans. His pregame warm-up is like he shoots a basketball. He's out there swinging like a PVC pipe. Whatever, fine. But then they have him doing like the Drew Brees towel drill where he's just like, And I posted I couldn't help myself. Like I reposted the original tweet and said, like, I'm not 100% sure what that towel drill is supposed to do, but I can guarantee it's a waste of time. Dude, and people just flooded into the comments trying to tell me how, well, it works for him. Like he threw for 300 yards today. And it's just so many people just kind of piling on.
Yeah, people don't understand the difference between in spite of and because of.
Yes.
He threw for 300 yards in spite of doing a silly drill that had no benefit.
Exactly. But now, like, because people saw C.J. Stroud doing that in his pregame, you're going to get a ton of kids now that want to do, like, the little flicky towel drill that, like, we know doesn't really do anything. It's not getting...
Yeah.
But if he thinks it helps him, then it helps him, which I don't really think is true.
It's sad because people really get taken by gurus and they get indoctrinated and they can't think flexibly anymore about, well, maybe this doesn't work as well as I thought it did.
Yep.
Like, there's never been any drill that I've been consistently married to for my whole life because they're just tools. Like, a lot of the drills I do, well, a couple of the drills that I would do, I did since college. I learned them there, but I refined them over time. Like, but I stopped doing the towel drill because I felt it was awkward. I felt like it was strained. It didn't feel like throwing. I didn't understand why I needed more extension. When I looked at myself on video, I was getting plenty of extension. It's like, do I really need to be hitting a chair to like work on this? Like, it was never clear to me that it had the benefits that it claimed. And that's one of the problems with drills is a lot of people say, well, these are the benefits. It's like, says who?
Yeah, can you prove that?
Like, just because you believe that it does X, it's like the same thing with like wrist flips. Like softball, they love doing wrist flips. And like, well, it helps you get behind the ball. And I'm like, says who?
Yeah.
That's not how you throw a softball. I mean, it is when you do that drill too much, but it's like, you get behind the ball here. How is this translating to that? Like, explain to me. And it's like, no one has an answer for that, but they're so bought into the idea of being behind the ball that they can't think critically or flexibly about it anymore.
Yep.
And they also don't use, in the softball world, they don't use that as evidence. It's like, for example, I play slow pitch softball, and there's a girl who plays in my league who's clearly like probably a former Division I shortstop, amazing fielder. She's a great hitter. She's just like a physical, just looks like a specimen. She's a great athlete. Her throws are just like grenades. So she'll like make a nice play, but she's got to get rid of it really quick because it's an arc. And I look at her and I'm like, you're a great athlete. Someone taught you wrong and you never got out of it.
Yep.
And there are plays that, like, you know, I'll play shortstop, and there's so many plays that I can make from deep in the hole because I'll just throw a seed across the diamond. And, like, that's the power of good throwing, but it's just like all those perpetually poor drills and teaching points that people are like, oh, well, it does this, so this is why we have to do it. It's like, no one's like, well, does it actually do that? No one, like, checks.
Yeah, and it all
most of them don't.
Yeah, well, the thing that's frustrating is a lot of those drills, they're going to affect your actual throwing or swinging mechanics. It just kind of bleeds over into your actual throwing.
Yeah.
The more you do any kind of drill, the more it bleeds over into your natural throwing motion. And now you have this problem where you're either kind of pushing the ball, you're dropping your elbow, because you're either doing a drill that wasn't a good drill in the first place, or you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of comes back to talking about, like, just practicing with a certain intention every time.
Yeah.
And actually doing things correctly to get the adaptation that you want. Like, dude, with like plyo ball drills, we have guys that sometimes will try to come in and just like fly through doing plyo ball drills, and they're doing them in a way that I know is going to
reshape their mechanics.
It's going to reshape their mechanics in a way that is not helpful. So
yeah, and that's the problem with throwing, is it's like the towel is so light. That's why one of the reasons I didn't like it. I'm like, this doesn't feel the same as a baseball. I like using the half-filled water bottle instead of a towel for those drills because it feels very similar. But like if you look at a quarterback's motion, they throw very different because that football is 14 ounces and it's bigger, so they have to keep it closer. They have to keep it closer to their ear. So even if you've never thrown a football before and you have a long, like, outfielder's arm path, you put a football in your hand and your arm path immediately changes a little bit because your body is smart and it knows it has to keep it closer and it has to reduce this joint angle at your elbow to do the job of throwing that football. And so you have to be really cautious. Like, the baseball weight or the softball weight is not magical, it's arbitrary. But the fact that that's your default means when you go really far on the other side, like light, or really far heavy, it's going to change your mechanics. And sometimes that's for the better, and you can do that strategically, but sometimes, like you said, it's to your detriment, and it just screws you up. And you have to, like, be really cautious about it. Not to mention, the stresses are very different. When you have a lighter ball, your elbow angle gets more obtuse. When you have a heavier ball, your elbow angle gets more acute. And you have to, like, there can be a lot of stress with that fly out when you're throwing a really light ball.
Oh yeah. We actually had, in the past, this was years ago, we would run like a throwing program, and when guys were throwing like heavier, like we would use, I think, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 ounce balls. So we were staying within that like 20-ish% range. When guys were throwing 6, 7 ounce balls, no arm discomfort ever, everybody was all good. When we started throwing the 3 ounce balls, that's when all of a sudden people started getting like bulky elbows, biceps starting bothering them. So there's very different stresses depending on what kind of ball you're using.
Yeah, I had the same experience because I tested a lot of stuff out myself before we would do them, and we didn't do many light ball throws because I was afraid of them.
Yeah, the lower volume on those definitely is the...
Because you feel just like a stretching sensation, and like there's just like a lot of sensations that feel like there's a lot of stress and tension in my arms with the light balls. That feels scary. Yeah,
the metaphor I always use is it's kind of like dry firing a bow. Where like if you ever like fired a bow or like bow hunted, you're not really supposed to like fire it without an arrow in it because it changes how fast the string is coming through, so it puts more stress on it, and it can break the bowstring.
Huh.
Which is, I thought was kind of interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.